welcome to The Good, The Bad and The Worst, a podcast where we watch movie trilogies and decide which movie isn't positive because it doesn't know what positive means. I'm your host Grana, and joining me today...
Buongiorno!
That's all we get.
and I'm Luke, and I'm as real as a donut.
All right, boys, we are doing the what did he call it? The alternate history vengeance trilogy from Quentin Tarantino. Our first lot of Quentin Tarantino movies we've ever done. This trilogy was declared by him on a podcast that I was listening to, and it was just too good to turn down. Luke, kick us off. How do you feel about Tarantino in general?
So I feel like maybe out of all of us, I'm the most non-Tarantino fan. I had never really watched a Tarantino film until the last couple of years. And then in 1 year, I'd watched Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, enjoyed them. But as I said last time, I'd never rewatched any of his films. Loved Django, loved Inglorious Basterds when it came out. Liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But for some reason, just had the further I got away from that film, the more I thought back on it as like, oh, I didn't enjoy that film. But it was good to rewatch them. I think rewatching them again has definitely made me appreciate some of them even more than I had previously. I like his film style. I don't like feet as much as he does, but
no one does.
No one does. Yeah.
once I've known that over the years now, seeing all the memes about him and feet, it was kind of hard to not see all the feet in some of these films.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, oh, okay, that feels weird. I feel like I'm watching something from his private collection.
Yeah.
But yeah, I prefer his films when he's not in them because he cannot act. So.
Come on now.
Yeah,
come on. The
he
one
can't
in
do.
Django,
He
I'm
can't
like,
do
this is
certain
just
accents.
bad.
Yeah, he
No.
definitely can't do certain accents.
No, but overall, he's definitely got a style, and you got to give him credit for it. Like he makes good films. He does make good films. So yeah.
I'm shocked. You say you've only a few years ago saw them. Like I don't know how you're a white male who has any knowledge of film who hasn't had Tarantino as your personality for at least 6 months.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah,
I feel like that's a rite of passage. You know, if you ever enjoy movies, Tarantino's gonna be the patron saint at some point. You're gonna have a Pulp Fiction poster.
I have one in my house because my wife has had one for her whole life. She loves Pulp Fiction. So
Yeah, the human race.
I feel like if you went to high school, like you had to have watched these movies. They were often quoted, poorly understood, I think, but much beloved by high school students for some reason.
That's what I mean. There's like I've been thinking about this a lot because I was talking with a guy who was saying that he was saying there was some movie that was overrated, and I was like, I was Lord of the Rings. You're saying Lord of the Rings is overrated, and I was just thinking,
that's a pretty good take.
But I was thinking of like, there's like 3 stages of film. Film interest. There's the initial wave where you're like, oh wow, Tarantino's the coolest guy who's ever lived. Then after a few years of getting into movies, you're like, oh, Tarantino's overrated. Maybe he's a hack. And then later on again, you come back and go, oh, no, wait, Tarantino is really, really good. But I'm embarrassed of the fact that I tried to talk like him and act like him when I was 17. So, there's a wave of the Tarantino relationship. And
Are you in that final wave now, Conan?
I think so. I was never like, oh, he's an overrated hack. But there is a huge amount of like film discourse rejecting his stuff and, like, that derides him as sort of immature and as more of a DJ is the way I've seen him described than an actual filmmaker. But that I think, like, especially in his early movies, he remixes a lot, and so there's some critical takes that say he doesn't have that much to say. But I think those people are also just as unenlightened as the same ones who are like, Tarantino's the most unique voice in cinema.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think I like to think I'm at the end of all that, but
yeah, I think I've come back around a bit too. Like I never was like I really hate Tarantino or anything like that, but I think I got bored. There's a few of his movies I don't particularly like, I think, and I got a little bit bored of him. But definitely like Django and Inglorious Basterds, that might be my favorite like 1-2 punch from a director. Like I love those 2 movies. I really like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, but I don't know. Django and Inglorious Basterds are like 2 of my favorites.
Yeah, we might talk about it more, but I think this trilogy marks a clear sort of divide in his filmography and like a shift in him as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
See, like I just to talk about my ignorance of Tarantino, like you guys are saying, in high school you were watching him and like that's where you get introduced to. See, I was quoting stuff from Pulp Fiction, but it was because I'd only known those scenes from when WrestleMania went Hollywood and a bunch of the wrestlers did scenes from Pulp Fiction. And I was like, oh, this is cool, So that's my knowledge. That was my knowledge of Pulp Fiction.
Well, that's kind of the thing. The entire like pop culture post 1992 and 1994 is imbued with Tarantino, whether you know it or not. Everything from like the idea of non-linear narratives to gimps to dudes in suits walking down streets, like
sticking a watch up your ass,
sticking watches up your ass, as we've all done. Like his fingerprints are on everything, and he's probably could be the most influential filmmaker on 21st century cinema because of that. Because even if you've never seen a Tarantino movie, you have quoted something Tarantino, you have made jokes, and you would know the stuff. It's like, Western culture is like founded, and modern Western pop culture is founded on a lot of Tarantino stuff, which is ironically founded on other 80s and 70s and 60s stuff. But
I feel like that Royale with cheese conversation has only been often parodied, but it's been often like. People have tried to do their own dialogue like that, and I don't feel like many people do it well, like Tarantino does. But that that kind of off the wall, just strange out of nowhere conversation apropos of nothing. Lots of people have tried to do that, and very few do it as well as Tarantino, I believe.
It's so true. Like you see it it's kind of the sign of not a juvenile writer, but it's the sign of like you can see how they've tried to learn and why they've gotten into filmmaking. Like someone writes a script where it's just characters talking about things, and they're having non sequiturs and they're talking about these weird things, and it's like you're clearly a big Tarantino fan, and the difference is Tarantino kind of knows a bit more about why to do that. Like the old adage I've heard is like Tarantino knows movies so well, because the golden rule is, show, don't tell. He knows movies so well, though, that he knows how to tell and not show. But it's only because he knows the rules so well that he can break them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't know the rules well enough and you break them, you look like an idiot. Whereas he knows exactly how to bend it, how to manipulate it, how to use dialogue as the main mode of storytelling. I'm like, he is kind of in a league of his own. But yeah, you're right. It's just he's so mimicked, so copied. Like, just the cool guys talking about nonsense. Like, it'll be done till the day we die. And
we have to thank for it, I think.
Yeah, and like only sort of Guy Ritchie's the ones I can think of who did it pretty well initially.
I don't want to relitigate this, but I kept thinking of the Zayla trilogy.
Oh, don't talk smack on Zayla.
Look, there's that scene in Dragged Across Concrete where he has Deborah from Dexter. I don't know what her name is, but where she had, she's leaving for her first day back at work, and she leaves her baby behind, and then gets murdered. And that feels like such a Tarantino scene, but it so doesn't work for me in that movie personally, because I don't think the rest of that movie holds up. Like, I'm not so invested in the rest of that movie that scene stands well on its own. Yeah. Whereas Tarantino, I feel like almost every scene he does stands alone, nearly as a vignette in a lot of ways. Like, it's internally entertaining while also moving the story along a lot of the time. Doesn't always have to be, doesn't have to have a huge impact on the story, but it's this entertaining moment in time that we get. And I don't know, we've seen it copied millions of times, and I don't think many others do it as well,
for sure.
So obviously Tarantino's, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, it's come out recently, and basically he keeps pushing this narrative that like he's going to make one more film and that's it.
10th and final film.
He's out. Do you think that's legitimate? Like he will not make another film, or what's your take on that, Conan? Because I know you've gone and seen like a Tarantino.
I've seen him in the flesh twice.
Yes.
not three.
And he knew about it one of the times.
3.
He did.
Yeah.
I said Quentin, and he said, "Who said my name? Who was it?" And everyone just looked at The
other time was in the bushes outside his house.
Yeah. And he's like,
he knows I was there. I had my feet out, and he was like, I can smell something
I
wonderful.
know that foot anyway.
No,
So,
yeah,
from your personal knowledge of him, how do you feel
personal
about
experience.
QT?
I don't know. I was gonna say he's a man of his word, but he's not. He's if anything, he throws a lot of shit out there and waits. For a long time, you were saying he was making a Star Trek film. Apparently, he has a script written for that. He said he was going to make a horror film. His 10th film is in production. The Film Critic, that is happening. That is pre-production started. He's looking to cast. I think there was the guy from Richard Jewell was in talks to be the titular critic. So that is happening. Yeah, I don't know if he'll be like. He strikes me kind of as the Rolling Stones kind of guy. He's like, "This is my last film," and then he'll just have to keep in maybe one more, maybe one more. But at the same time, he has got he's always said he wants to get into books, and he's written 2 books now. He is now married with a kid, and so he's slowed down his production a lot. And then he's also talked about how he wants to make 5 episodes of Bounty Law. He has the scripts written for that show, and he says that he really wants to do that. He has often talked about making Kill Bill 3, which he says wouldn't technically be a film because Kill Bill 1 and 2 are one film. He is really hard to say. He has always said 10 and done. So that is something he's kind of stuck with for years now. So I wouldn't be too surprised if he does the Film Critic and then that's it. I'd be really bummed out, but I do get the feeling because since Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he's written 2 books and he's working on the script. He's 60 years old now, I think, or something. He's he's not a young spring chicken anymore. So Scorsese still makes movies every bloody 2 years.
Scorsese has come out and said he wishes he had more time.
He's got more stories to tell.
But Scorsese is a different breed. He's sort of makes a movie every year or 2. Tarantino makes a film every 3 or 4 years. Tarantino's 60. He will slow down eventually, and I think he does want to sort of write more. He's more interested in film scholarship the older he gets, as you can see in these movies. I think that's where his passions truly lie, and so I think as he gets older, he'll just settle down a bit, which is really sad. I don't want him to go, but
it's funny you mention that because obviously I don't look into his work too much or his interviews or anything like that. But watching especially a few scenes in these films, I kept having the thought, I was like, man, it'd be cool if he made a horror film. I think he could make a good horror film.
Yeah,
with the right actors. There's some scenes that are the most tense scenes that I've seen in a lot of movies.
I go back and forth, because he's incredible at tension, but he's also kind of
tension. It's just he can do really a good thriller. He could do a really good thriller.
He can do a good thriller. I don't know if he could escape his comedy. He's got too much of a funny bone. I don't know if he could make a true-blooded horror film because I feel like he would need to have comedy. He can't help himself, and that's part
of Nope or Get Out.
That's what I was thinking.
Actually, you're right. He could do something like that. He could don't know if he could interrogate the black experience as well as Jordan Peele, but he could interrogate something for sure.
If there's a white man that would try, it's him.
Hey, a horror film about a creepy dude with a foot fetish, something like that. Just
you can speak to. I would love to see his attempt at horror or horror comedy. It'd be amazing. But I actually don't think because part of the thing with Tarantino is you see a Tarantino movie. He's one of the true auteurs because even with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which we'll talk about, I think feels pretty different to a lot of his movies. On a rewatch, you're this is Tarantino through and through. You go to see a Tarantino movie. You don't go to see the Western starring Jamie Foxx. No. There's a reason why all of his movies are the X film by Quentin Tarantino, and his name is as big as the title. It's like Christopher Nolan. You go to see his movie. You go to see the person, and if there is a criticism to level at Tarantino, it's that he's not a chameleon filmmaker. He can't sort of lose himself in certain things. It's he will make a movie as he writes from his perspective. He makes films from his perspective. Every movie you watch of his, you are seeing Tarantino's DNA. He's bleeding onto the film print.
Yeah.
And, all the characters have a certain way they talk. Everyone is very literate. Everyone is really witty. And it's that's part of the charm is you go there to have this dialogue that just pops like that.
Yep. Yeah, maybe I'm glad he doesn't make a film every 2 years because it could get old, right? If he does make the same movie, and not the same movie, but you can really see his DNA in every movie.
Yeah.
Would we get sick of it if we had 30 of his films by now? Maybe.
Well, it's interesting. Inglorious Bastards was a kind of a return to form in a lot of ways. Like Death Proof wasn't very successful. Didn't do well commercially. Didn't do well critically either. And so there was
Hateful Eight, which I didn't watch Hateful Eight.
yeah.
Did it?
That was
well.
no, yeah, it didn't. That was the one I saw him at. But like it was just interesting seeing Death Proof with it was kind of his lull, and people were like, oh, maybe he's making missteps. What does this mean? And Inglorious was sort of a reminded everyone that he was important.
Yeah.
So it is just interesting. Like, yeah, if he was making a movie every year, we'd have probably more Death Proofs. We might have more Inglorious Bastards as well, but I do wonder if you're right that his reception would be a little bit different. Because at this stage, yeah, he's a spectacle filmmaker. It's an event to see a new Tarantino film.
Yeah. All right, should we get into the stats? Stats. Right, first up, Inglorious Basterds, a budget of $70 million, made $321 million at the box office worldwide. Django Unchained, $100 million budget, made $426 million. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, $90 million budget, made $377 million.
Not big.
No, he's not. He's not like the biggest box office guy.
No. But I guess yeah. I wonder how much video on demand and streaming and DVDs and stuff. Because everyone has a DVD copy of Pulp Fiction. Even if you own one DVD, it's probably Pulp 100%, Fiction.
Yeah.
So I wonder, how much these ones were like that.
It's also like Django and Inglorious Basterds, like they had an R rating in America, right? Or did they not? Or
they would have surely.
Yeah, they would have to. Yeah.
Which obviously before Deadpool, I feel like most people considered R films like dying in cinema, like they didn't really do too well. At the box office, but yeah.
Well, it's partly because studios are so unwilling to take, unless it's making Marvel money, what's the point in even getting out of bed for it, right? Like, why even bother?
Yeah.
Sad. So sad. All right. Critical response. Metacritic, 69 for Inglorious Basterds, 80 for Django Unchained, and 83 for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's wild scores there.
Critics are whack.
Critics love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If we look at IMDb, it's 8.3 for Inglorious Basterds, 8.5 for Django Unchained, and 7.6 for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Inglorious Basterds, the discourse around that movie is weak. But
I wonder why it's received so poor critically. Do you know what?
Do we talk about it now, or do we?
Yeah, let's get into it. In Nazi-occupied France during World War II, a plan to assassinate Nazi leaders by a group of Jewish US soldiers coincides with a theatre owner's vengeful plans for the same. Why don't critics like this movie, Conan? Do you know?
I mean, look, there's no definitive answer, but there's two there's kind of one main reason. I guess there's a review by Peter Bradshaw he writes for The Guardian. Generally, he's pretty good. He gave this movie 1 star. Like, he loathed it.
Mm.
And his main criticism was talking about how it was very different from his earlier stuff. Like, none of the dialogue was overly exciting. It wasn't full of pop culture references. It didn't have the same sort of like pop banter rat-a-tat feel of his earlier films. And so his real criticism is like, it's not fun. It's overstretched. It's long, like it's too long-winded. It's too self-serious. It's confusing. That's one criticism that gets leveled at a lot. And I think that was a real misunderstanding. That was people who were like, Tarantino will always be this cool 30-year-old who used to work at the video store. And if he ever makes something mature, he'll be a hack.
Mm.
So I think that this movie divided because of that. A lot of people were expecting more just crazy fun pop culture references, and instead they got a 2.5-hour war film filled with like dense German cinema references, talking about Pabst and like I still don't know who Pabst is really.
Yeah.
And so like naturally a lot of people were like, why aren't they talking about the Big Macs? The other main criticisms level is the debate about if this movie is insensitive. Yeah, obviously World War II is a pretty contentious topic for some people. But what I mean contentious is there is there is a tendency by people to monopolize tragedy. And what I mean by that is people like to think that if there's a tragedy that affects them in any way, shape, or form, they're the ones who have sole authority to speak on that or to speak about that. And so if something, you see it with people, this is very dangerous ground, so I'm trying to navigate it really cautiously. But essentially, this comes down to the fact that Tarantino is not a Jewish person.
Sure.
And by rewriting history, by changing the events, because spoiler, Hitler didn't die in a cinema in 1944. People saw him as whitewashing history, as insulting the memory. There was one reviewer, I can't remember who it was, but he was scathing. He was basically saying he makes Jewish soldiers Nazis in this movie by making them these barbaric, scalping party. He's turning Jewish soldiers into Nazis, which is spitting on the graves of dead soldiers. So that's where the real criticism comes from. The idea of are you allowed to talk about it in this way? Are you allowed to reimagine history? Are you allowed to ever say of this event that is, so rightly hurtful to people and still a very sore wound for people who are living with this? Is it insensitive to talk about that? Now, I think that's an absurd take. I think it's insulting to have that take, to say that some people can't talk about events. Some people can't even imagine events because they didn't experience it. That's just complete bullshit. And it makes me vehemently angry when someone's like, oh, you're not a person of a certain ethnicity, therefore you can't write about that perspective. You can't talk about it. You can't consider it because you don't know. It's absurd. That's insulting. That only sows complications and division and actually makes the issues worse in society, where we go, oh, you want to understand me? You can't ever try to imagine what I've been through. You have to let me tell you what it's like. Because all that creates is a you versus me and a divided narrative. And so the idea that saying, oh, he's not Jewish, therefore he can't talk about it, or he can't even reimagine, he has to address history as it is absurd. It also misunderstands cinema. Cinema is not fact. It's not a Wikipedia page. It's a story. And if there's a purpose behind that story being told, that's fair enough. Now, if he was just, I think he handles it in a way that has a point, and so it's fine. If he was just like, here's a bunch of Jewish soldiers descending into depravity for no point besides they can, maybe it's a different conversation, but that's not what he does. Rant over.
It's interesting because obviously post Trump in 2018,
geez, we are really just into it tonight, aren't we?
No, but in the media, you couldn't go an hour without reading a story about this person's a Nazi. It seems like any controversial figure in media, if they're a racist, is they're a Nazi, all this sort of stuff. And it feels like it's this same sort of people that would say Nazi, 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 that are also saying there's a problem with this. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird to throw that term out about people in today's age, that obviously it's kind of, but in doing that, you're kind of throwing away what people and minimizing what people went through back then.
Yeah, for sure.
I can see that perspective of it, kind of see it from the perspective of not being able to, Jewish soldiers doing this and doing that sort of stuff. But I don't know, it's not cool to watch Nazis.
I know, can't we just watch Nazis get their heads?
And who doesn't want to see Hitler get shot to pieces in a cinema, brutally? You'd think that's great. It's kind of this thing of being an alternate version of this thing where the good guys really messed up the bad guys and got the upper hand on this, and it's, I don't know, it's strange to me to look at it as a bad thing.
And alternate history takes on World War II is the most well-trod ground in the world. Everybody's written one, and in half of them Hitler wins, which is that not way more offensive to the Jewish people? Because think about what happened to the Jewish people in that situation,
wins,
right?
It's not good for them.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting that people have that opinion. I guess maybe I'm just too dumb, but I'm just here's a cool Nazi killing film.
No, it's not too dumb at all. I think it's a sign of immaturity on the behalf of people who are this movie isn't revering this historical event the way I revere it. It's bad. That take is so immature and so problematic. It's those are the kind of people who have opinions you disagree with me, you're a Nazi, or you're a bigot, because it's that kind of nonsense rhetoric that doesn't have any basis. It stifles actual engagement.
Yeah.
So the idea to say that this movie could be insulting or shouldn't exist because he has no authority to speak on it, yeah, it's a real sign of immaturity, and it boggles my mind that like film critics, proper like professionals, were like, "Oh no, this movie is insultingly bad." I'm like, it just makes me question how they even got the job. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's funny that we don't see a similar like Metacritic score reflected in Django Unchained though, because you could level the exact same criticism at that.
It is the exact same
yeah.
criticism, but about a different thing.
But
Yeah.
we don't see it.
That again, I truly don't understand that. Like, I was shocked reading through it all, like reading through how, like, some people do just find Inglorious Basterds a bit more boring. I think some reviews I read was like there are long scenes of just like of talking, and I'm like, yeah, if that's not your thing, sure, but those are the kind of ones that are like, this movie is not amazing, it's good. The ones that actually hated it or really disliked it
Like,
for the
they should watch Dragged Through Concrete, because some of the talking in Inglorious Basterds.
Dragged Through Concrete.
Yeah.
The sequel.
Dragged Across Concrete. Because I tell you what, some of the talking scenes in Inglorious Basterds I find are so captivating, where it's just like an acting tour de France. Like, it's just, it's awesome. But yeah.
Well, let's talk about what we like about the movie then, because I mean,
Yes.
should we start with the opening scene? Like, what a great introduction to a movie! What a great introduction to what's his face as an actor,
Christoph Waltz.
Christoph Waltz. Like, holy dooly, just eating up scenery, building that tension.
The scene that I remember, like, ever since I
Everybody
watched
remembers
it,
this scene.
this is the scene that I remember, and this is a scene like that's just, it's just like shit. Like, I don't know, like the tension in the scene as he's there having this conversation. It's just, Christoph Waltz is so damn good in this film, and in Django as well. But he's so good in this movie, and this whole scene just every time I was just like, oh my god, like on the edge of my seat, even though I've already seen it before. It's just so good.
It's truly astounding. I remember seeing this for the first time. It was 2009. Me and my sister saw it at like the entertainment quarter here in Sydney. We were down for a holiday, and I just remember, like, even at the time, I'm like, I am witnessing something amazing. And just seeing that scene, and then afterwards, like, a friend at school saw it at a similar time, and we just talked about it at length. We were like, holy shit, how good is that movie? How about that scene?
Yeah.
Like, this is one of the best opening scenes. I'd say of all time. Like, it'd easily be, I think, in top 5 of. Which, I don't know, maybe it's too early. Like, there's 150 years of cinema to say that. But I'm like, it's this opening is astounding. Like, just as a piece of writing and as a piece of direction, both. It's just it had to be like the best thing Tarantino's ever written. And I felt like whenever I think about trying to write an opening scene myself, I'm like, how do I do something like that? And I look at it, I'm like, what does he do there? And just you watch the power plays and the camera work and just the way he uses language, like the doubles and the triples, and just changes between French and English, and people playing games on games is I don't know how someone does that. I don't know how someone comes up with this stuff.
Yeah, the fact that I like can feel the tension when they're speaking in French is like, holy dooly. Like, I don't know. There's something about that scene that transcends just the dialogue, just the language to, how it all feels is so good. And the camera work, like, I love that scene where it just pans around them and then pans under the floorboards. It's just so good.
The perfect moment to reveal it.
Yeah.
Why does it let Shoshana run away?
Yeah, I had that question too.
Like, if this is his job, why would he not then get in the car and hunt her down, like drive after her? I don't.
So here's me read on that, because that's a good question. Like, I mean, you can read it as either she's out of range, and he's lining it up, and he's so precise that he knows, okay, this won't hit it regardless. Or you could read it as, because in that scene, all he talks about is how he loves his job. He's the best at hunting Jews. He is, he loves it. He thinks like it. It's like, you can see it in everything, the way he carries himself.
Thrill of it.
Exactly. He enjoys the thrill of the hunt. And so the way I read it is that it's like he catches them, but one gets away, and he recognizes in that moment, competition.
Yeah.
Like, you can run wherever you want. And he wants it to. He's like, go, I will find you though. And that's what he enjoys more than anything. He doesn't enjoy necessarily, because you get that point later when he talks to Aldo at the end, where he's like, he kind of has contempt for the name. And there's a part where Aldo's like, you're a Jew, and he's like, Jew hunters. And he can tell he doesn't like his nickname. He's like, it's just a silly title that's stuck.
Yeah.
And so I think more than anything, he just likes the thrill of hunting down people. Like, he's a detective. And but that's a great part. Like, it could be either or. It could be that. It could be, I don't know.
And we're skipping a bit, but do you think he knew that was her later?
Oh, you
Yeah.
Like
reckon?
the milk, he orders milk
With the
for-
milk?
for-
Yeah.
True,
It's gotta be.
true.
It's
Forgot
interesting.
about that.
I think, yeah. Again, it could be either or, but the way I read it is, yeah, he knows exactly who she is. I mean, I'm not sure how, but we've had 4 years pass, so it's like he might have found pictures. Who knows? But he's obviously come to this area. He knows enough to be able to. I think definitely he knows where she is. Like the cigarette in the strudel, is like the most on the nose sort of like boot heel into something beautiful. It's like,
Yeah.
he's all but saying, "I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to I've got you here."
Well, I don't know. Why does he just continue to play with her then? He's playing with his food, I guess. I don't know.
Has he already gotten to that point where he's like, I'm going to make a deal and go back and go to America or whatever? Or
I think so. Like they have that point where there is one scene where he talks about like Hitler even says the Americans are they're on the beach. And so it does feel like there's a sense of finality where he kind of knows their beat. Or at the very least they know that like this isn't going to go as easily as they can, and they're all just more about celebrating what they've done rather than what they might be able to do. So I think he's already at this point made that decision. He already plans to do something at this showdown. But yeah, he's got her there, and he's not even so much obsessed with getting her because it's more he knows it. He has caught her, and he knows that she knows he's caught her, and that's what matters. And that's why this movie's so good, because there is all of this double, triple, quadruple facing.
Yeah.
Like you never know what any character is truly thinking at one time, except for Aldo Rain, who makes it pretty explicit at all times what he's thinking. But like you are never the smartest person in the room. You're always at a table with smarter people than you, where everyone is playing duplicity, and it's just wonderful.
man, this whole movie is just intense conversations at tables. Like,
Yeah.
it's great.
Did you guys expect that when you first saw it? Like, were you surprised at all by how talky this is?
I was. Like, I must admit, my criticism of this movie then, and possibly even now, is I wish there was more of the bastards running around France beating in Nazi heads, because we basically get 2 small scenes of it, and that's plus the finale, and that's about it. Like,
Yep.
And they kind of set it up like, oh, this is gonna be kind of like a heist movie. Here's all the bastards. He's all like, he's a sniper, and he's a guy who's good with explosives or whatever, and like, here's their role, here's their little title card, because we get that for the one German import. So I thought, we're going to get introduced to each one of them. Each one of them is going to have a role to play. But half of them you see for about 3 seconds, and that's it. And is that a wasted opportunity? Probably not, because I think it's probably more fun than what we get is more fun. But that was probably my criticism. I can understand people having that criticism.
No, I can too. Like, every time I watch this movie, I'm surprised at both. I see this and I'm like, this is his masterpiece. This is his best movie ever that he's made. But then I'm also like, but there are still problems with it. And it's a really weird tension I always have where I'm like, it's not flawless by any means. And I'm like, some of the conversations that I love, I'm like, they could probably be trimmed a little bit. And like, I don't like the David Bowie song at the end. It really takes me out of it. And I'm the same. Like, I want to see at least one more scene. Like, there's this great scene in the trailer I remember that they cut that shows one of the bastards just running through with a massive chain gun. And I'm like, I want to see that scene. I just want to see 15 seconds. I want to see a little bit more, but he doesn't. And so I'm always like, I'd love to know what if. But at the same time, maybe it'd be much worse. And the heights this movie reaches, it's like they undo the flaws
Is that stuff more memorable than what we got? Because I feel like the stuff we get is quite memorable. So
yeah, and it's one of those things like all the generally the best things are the tiniest ones that you wish you had more of. As soon as you get more of what you want, it's never as good. And part of the reason why we love the head smashing scene so much is because it's just that one shot with a bat. If we had 3 or 4 of those, it'd probably lose its impact, right?
Yeah.
My question is, how did we never get a Wolfenstein movie with Til Schweiger? Like, he looks just like Moskowitz, right? Like, have we not?
I thought it was him. I thought it was Moskowitz.
It's nuts how we.
Yeah.
I think he's a bit old now, but I'm like, damn, is this the closest we get?
Yeah, basically.
Probably.
Damn shame.
I can't be the only one that was convinced it wasn't just the actor, that it was actually the character of Austin Powers playing the general with Mike Myers.
I love that casting so much.
It just felt like I was like,
it's
oh my
very
God,
strange.
I
It's
was
so
like,
weird.
I can't see it. I can't unsee it. It just feels like it's Austin Powers pretending to be like, dress up as a general.
Tarantino has a weird thing with stunt casting like that. In all these movies, there are moments where it's like, why have you cast that person? And it always takes me out of it. And part of it is like it's just him being like, look what I can do.
Look at the budget. Yeah, I can.
Yeah,
Look,
just
look
like
at the original actor who played Django, right? Like it's the exact
exactly.
same thing again. Yeah,
100%. It's like completely takes you out of it. Has no purpose in the movie, but
Yeah.
is like, oh yeah, cool. It's like yes, like why is Mike Myers in this? I don't get it, but it's
One
just
scene.
it's really fun, and I always enjoy it still.
Yeah,
Even though you're right, it definitely like undoes the spell.
I enjoyed it. I was like, whatever, in for the ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of these films have that. I feel like there's so many times where I'm just like, oh my God, that person's in it too. Like that's really weird.
Yeah.
But especially later on. But yeah,
For sure. Brad Pitt as is
Aldo Rain.
phenomenal in this movie. Every time I watch it, I'm just like, I don't know if it's his best performance, but I feel like it'd be in his like top 3, right? Top 5. Like,
It is really good.
just
I just love the use of language in this movie. Like all the Americans they only speak American English. Like they have the hardest, thickest accents. Anytime they say something like Frau von Hammersmarch, like it's just Buongiorno. Like it's so good. Every time they open their mouths, it's so funny.
Eli Ross accent in this is just
is
something else. From Hammersmark. Where have you? I don't know if you've ever been to Boston. But then you're right,
and like they play that up with the UK accents as well. Like, what's his face's Queen's English is just so immaculate, but
it's like you're right. It is super entertaining because then you've got Mike Myers being like the most put on English accent you've ever.
Yeah,
you've got Rod Taylor doing Churchill for like 2 lines. He's an Australian, and it's like. It's just kind of whatever, but that's again like a little film nod to old school 60s movies.
Yeah,
but you're right. But those accents also speak a lot. Like they tell what Fassbender's accent tells you exactly who he is. He's a proper Englishman, and Mike Myers, like he is just you get like every word he says is like liquid gold. And then you've got like Aldo Rain, who is just a blunt instrument. He is just like just slack jawed and then. Like hillbilly, but he is just you're not going to be able to kill him because he's just like a force of he's a hammer. He'll just smash through anything. Like, and then you've got Hitler and his like his kind of like juvenile German accent. He's like having fits everywhere. Like you're right. The use of language and tone and accents is it's again a sign of like quality because it's not just there for laughs. It actually says something about all the characters.
Yeah, like all the German officials like all have their quirks.
Yes.
Where it cuts to Goebbels having sex with his interpreter and he's just making the weirdest noises. It's very funny.
Right. It really is.
But
Tarantino's a funny guy.
I could listen to Christoph Waltz talking French like all day. Like he's just like it's just great to listen to.
He's amazing, right? Like just to come out of nowhere, like he was just on some German TV and movies. And then Tarantino has this tendency, he just finds people and he either restarts careers or he sets up careers. And then, out of nowhere, like, I don't think anyone in the English-speaking world besides him maybe has seen him. And this guy comes along and, like, wins an Oscar.
Yeah.
And then 3 years later does it again. It's like... But then I wanted to ask you, do you guys think he is seeing what we've seen of him, what do you think of him as an actor? Outside of Tarantino movies?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I like him here, but now I feel like he's just saying yes to everything... doing whatever comes across his... Which, I mean, go out there and make money, who cares? Like, that's fine. But he doesn't have that air of mystery like he did in these movies. Like... Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen him in other stuff yet.
I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff, but just here and there. Like, he just seems to pop up
when I
all
think
over
of him,
the place.
I just think of him being awesome in Django and Inglorious Basterds. That's it. It's like those two things is what...
Like, just looking at his own... Because he was in Bond, and I remember...
that's right.
And I remember leading up to that. Winning. Yeah, there was so much excitement. It was like Christoph Waltz, and then he's kind of flat. But
that's not his faults as well.
So that's what the question is, right? Like, is Tarantino just able to get performances out of people that no one else can do, or
write characters that are more interesting?
Is that it?
Villain. I don't know. but
It's because his career is whack. Like, just so many middling but to bad movies. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't. It's really sad because I want him to just be like, I want him to. Yeah, I want the best for him because he's so freaking talented. But yeah, you're right. He's just I don't know. He is like a magnet in this movie. Every scene he is in, he just holds. He's charismatic. He's frightening.
Yeah.
He's disarmed. He's like some of his it's the way he stares and he'll smile. And it's like you just feel shook by it.
And then even later on, like where he's like all giddy because he's making a deal with the people in the US, like
that's
just,
a bingo.
Yeah, just entertaining the whole way through.
Yeah, I remember in an interview I saw Tarantino. Someone asked, "Was like, who's your favorite character you've been made?" And it's like before the question was over, he's like Hans Lander. I'm like, yeah, this is kind of a career, like it's a career performance for Waltz, but it's also kind of like a career character. I don't know, he's kind of like the character I think of to Tarantino now. Where I'm like, who's the best character he's ever written? Like Lander's always top 3, I think.
Yeah,
just,
I think like I don't know. I feel like for me, a lot of his movies are kind of ensemble pieces too, and there's not like for Pulp Fiction, I couldn't really pick who stands out.
Yeah,
maybe it's Samuel L. Jackson, maybe it's Bruce Willis. Like I don't know, they're all really good in that movie, but in this movie, he really stands out here.
Yeah,
Waltz really stands out.
Yeah, you got like we'll rank them properly, but the final scene in this movie, it's Brad Pitt looking at the camera and says, "You know what? I think this might just be my masterpiece." Now I remember as soon as I saw that, I was like, "That's Tarantino saying that. That's not Brad Pitt, everybody." And people are like, "No." But I feel like now that, like, do you think he thinks this is his masterpiece, and do you guys think this is his masterpiece, or am I crazy to say that?
I really like this movie. I don't think it's my favorite. It might be my second favorite. It's very close. It's very, very close. I don't really know what Tarantino's opinion of this movie is. I think he likes it, right? Like from what I've heard in random interviews here and there, like he's pretty proud of his work here. But
like, I truly think that that's him saying that. Like he's working on this movie for years. This was in the works since like early 2000s. And like Hans Lander is his self-professed favorite character. I reckon this is him saying like this is his best. Maybe he's changed it since then, but like at the time, especially, I think he was just like, yeah, this is the best thing I've done. And after all that comes after, I'm like, I don't think he's surpassed this.
It'd have to be in if not the top 2 or 3 for me for his films. I haven't seen all of his films, so.
Big Jackie Brown fans here.
I was gonna say Jackie Brown number 1.
I don't even. That's the thing. I've seen Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, and these.
I'm not a fan of Jackie Brown, for the record.
Yeah, I have to say that again because I wasn't either. Have you not seen Kill Bill?
No.
Wow. Fair enough. Okay. I just want to. You should. Those movies are. Again, everyone knows those movies. I just want to talk. I need to mention quickly, just like, so this movie marks his transition from, like, I said it kind of before, like DJ phase, like Tarantino, as his earlier films are all kind of modern crime movies. They're all referencing pop culture, like like Reservoir Dogs has that great talk about. Here's a Madonna song that's actually about sex and not about this. Like all of his stuff is about modern things. This kind of marks his transition though to talking about. All the references are like film history specifically. And so instead of him being super interested in it's just pop culture. He's like, no, I'm interested in film culture. And I think this movie is like more than anything, just a massive, massive testament to like what he believes is the power of movies. Like the fact that the entire ending is basically the war is won through movies.
Yeah.
Like the face of revenge is a Jewish face on the movie screen.
Yep, and it's film reels that are burning up this cinema.
Yeah, it's
all very on the nose.
It is. It's also so effective.
It works really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, and like this is why I guess I just want to speak my piece. This is why I think this is his masterpiece. Like this is him sort of tapping into something bigger than just the tricks that he knows and saying I can reference stuff. He's actually saying, here is why we reference stuff. Here is actually the purpose of referencing things because movies do matter. And like, look at the power of storytelling. Look at what we could do. Imagine a world that was slightly more reverent of cinema, that was slightly more invested in the power of this art form, it can stop wars. Is that like a bit cute or a bit over the top? Maybe, but it does kind of speak to this belief that, you know, art can overcome obstacles, art can overcome differences. It can actually have power to stop tragedy and stop tyrants, and like that's a pretty profound thing. And I know a lot of movies and a lot of art and literature engages with this, like the power of communication and words to overcome tragedy and disaster and horror. And this is in Tarantino's own way him saying that. I think it's him saying, look at what movies can do when you respect them and when you engage with them. And this medium that I love so much isn't just something fun to reference and, you know, pick up chicks with. It is actually like, it is super important to the fabric of our DNA. I'm like, I don't know. I think that's amazing.
Well said. Well said. I
You
think that was
too.
your masterpiece.
Amen.
Right.
Just before we move on, just want
right.
to just talk about the other scene, the Michael Fassbender scene at the table in
the basement. Yeah.
The basement is such a good scene, and just the tension in that as well, when you're just like, oh, they're almost out there. It's all going to plan. They just need to do this. And just the way like your gut just sinks when he does the 3 and the guy's face is looking at it and just like,
you can just see
okay.
it. Yeah.
It's like, oh no. Even when I first watched it, I was like, I don't know what's gone wrong, but something just went wrong. I'm like, I don't know
that
what
they don't even
3 is,
reveal
but...
it till later on. Like it's not
Yeah.
it's not like it's a tell that we're waiting to happen. It's like,
Well,
oh shit, what happened? I don't
commonly
even
known.
understand what happened, and they don't explain it till later.
Yeah. But like we're yeah.
I was just say, like, I love the twist. Like he does his twist on the Mexican standoff too, there, where like in the stairwell. I don't know. It's very funny. It's very well done.
Yeah. Just the build up with the guns, or he's like, I've got my Walther pointed at your balls. It's like, well, I've had my Walther pointed at your balls. And then Silver's like, no, I've got mine pointed at your balls. And from this range, I'm a real Frederick Zoller. It's just like, oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, that scene is crazy.
All right, let's move on to Django Unchained. With the help of a German bounty hunter, a freed slave sets out to rescue his wife from a brutal plantation owner in Mississippi.
Christoph Waltz is a sex machine in this movie. Holy crap.
He is really good. Says Jamie Foxx. This is my favorite Tarantino movie. I love everyone in this movie. It's really good. I think the opening is really good. It's probably not as strong as Inglorious Basterds, but just how casual Waltz comes along and just takes out these two slavers and leaves them at the demise of the rest of the men. It's just so good.
Slaves. This is the most rewatchable of his movies, I think. I've talked about this before. Like, I've watched this movie like 6 times.
Yep.
And it's kind of the one, even more than Pulp Fiction, I'm like, I can just go back. Because I think it's divided up into like pretty clear scenes. It's like, here's the opening scene. Yep. Here's the great part where they go into town and he shoots the sheriff.
Yep.
Like, here's the bounty hunting montage. Here's the first plantation. Here's the KKK raid. Like, it's very well divided. And so you can just be like, every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that part. I can't wait for this scene. Or, you know, you can just dip in and be like, I want to watch the Candyland introduction and just sit there. It just works so well for like, you don't have to pay 100% attention. You go, oh yeah, I'll come back because I know what's going to happen in this scene. It's very clear. I'll come back when this other thing happens. You know, you can skip the Mandingo fighting if you want. And so then you don't have to, like, it just works still. You know exactly how it's going. It's so entertaining.
Yeah, as I was saying before, like Tarantino can be very vignette-y. Like each scene can stand on its own. I think that's really true in this movie. Like,
100%.
Each one is just self-contained and entertaining, but still pushes the story forward. And you know, they call back to it later on with the bounty hunter poster in his pocket and all that stuff. But
so good. That's
yeah. But yeah, I just find this movie endlessly entertaining. And again, it's very rewatchable to me as well.
Yeah. The amazing foreshadowing that where he's like, it's good luck to keep the bounty hunter poster.
Yeah.
And ends up being what saves his life. Luke, had you seen this before?
Yes. So this is I feel like this is actually probably the first Tarantino film I watched ever, because like this is one I went out to watch. Like, you know, I'd heard the good press about it. I was a diehard Leonardo DiCaprio fan. You know, he's my favorite actor, so I was like, I need to watch everything with him in it. So and you know, back then obviously I thought his portrayal in this, I was like, this is like the best acting ever. Like, what a great villain. Obviously, now being a bit more civilized, I'm like, well, no. Christoph Waltz in Inglorious Bastards is one of the best acting I've ever seen.
He's so
as a
good though.
villain.
You can't like it's
He
such
is.
a
He is.
what a
He is.
race to have to witness, right? Like
Yeah,
these two.
He's so good. Like these two characters, it's just like it's so just good to watch. Just eat up the scene, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like it's so crazy to watch it again after all these years, and then like realize like. I mean, you have like an hour and a half before Leo's even introduced. You know, it's like he's like the final act, basically, almost. And it's like, oh, okay, wow. Like I remember this film of him being, you know, this antagonist or whatever. But yeah, it's I really really enjoy this film. The KKK scene with the hoods always just cracked me up. Just the arguing and just like I think we all agree. It was a good idea.
We appreciate the effort.
We appreciate the effort.
Things could have been done better.
Could have done better. Just that goes out. Just cracks me up all the time. But
the tonal balance this movie strikes between like the comedy of like the comedy like just insulting these hillbilly slavers, like these rednecks, and just how Tarantino clearly has no respect for them. He's like these were rich idiots who lucked into a horrible trade. And then, but then it also doesn't shy away from like the horrible terms, like Mandingo fighting. Right, it's not a thing, but it's this perfect example, like this sort of emblematic thing of like here is the horrors of slavery kind of summed up in this one cinematic idea. And like it's those aren't played for laughs. Like those are awful. The Mandingo fight, the scene where D'Artagnan gets mauled by the dogs is like, like they are truly hard to watch.
Yeah,
and it's crazy. It's in the hands of someone lesser, it'd be bad, like having this kind of on one scene in one moment I'm laughing, in the next I'm crying. But Tarantino just juggles it perfectly, where this violence is like, no, this is serious. This is not something to be made light of.
Yeah.
But then when he's dealing with a lot of the slaves, it's like these are horrible hillbilly monsters who we should laugh at and be happy they're getting killed because they were bad people.
Yep.
And he just he juggles the tone so well that it never feels less than like a perfect unity in a way.
Jamie Foxx is so good in this as well.
Yep.
And so's why am I blanking?
Do you mean his wife or
no?
Brumhilda. I really enjoy Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. Like,
yes, that's unbelievable. I was like, why am I forgetting Dan?
Stephen, like the just pure evil.
Yeah. He's the thing that Django's pretending to be, right? Like, Django lays it out really well. Like, you know, these are black slavers, these are terrible people, and then this is exactly what Stephen is. Just like he's kind of this funny, dotty old man, but just like pure evil, as you say. Like,
there's that great scene at the end where he drops the walking stick. And so you realise that he's actually he puts on
playing it up.
Yeah.
He puts the limp on. It's like, oh, this guy is actually like, he's not just like an old man who's having to survive. Like, no, he's playing a game. He knows how to survive in this world by playing on other people's beliefs and insecurities. Like he's pure evil.
He's playing the long
game. He's playing the long con.
Yeah.
It's it's such a cool way to like such an interesting look into like where it's not for lack of a better phrase, it's not black and white, right? It's not just all black people and then were 100% innocent. It's like, no, there were people who did what they had to do to survive and unfortunately, gave up their humanity and did something terrible. And like, that would have happened. Like, it's a really interesting look. But he's only in it for like 40 minutes and he just he just owns the scenes he's in.
Yep. Christoph Waltz. I love the little dentist cart for the first half of the movie, just rocking. It's just showing up with this big tooth, bouncing back and forth. It's just like, who is this character? I love his little gun sleeve that he's got that just pops out.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
All the
sorts his way out of any trouble.
Yeah, all the smash cuts, like whenever just like the camera zooms right in close to show it to you. So when the gun pops out, or when you first see Leo when he turns around, just zooms right in, like
just nods.
This is great old like 60s film technique that it's really charming. The Aussie slavers at the end.
Yeah,
John Jarratt.
John Jarratt's is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, obviously he knows what he's doing with an Australian accent, but Tarantino has no right.
It's so bad.
It's offensive.
It's distractingly bad. Him.
Yeah,
I do like that he turns into like a smoking crater by the end of it, though. He's just
it's a bad scene. Oh, I laugh every time. The quick turn, it just blows up. Oh,
yeah.
holy shit.
What's the go with Butch? So he gets shot in the head at the start, and then he turns up later on Candy's farm, very suspicious, wearing a hat the whole time. I don't know. It's just so silly and stupid, like unnecessary, but it's so fun.
No, I love that casting so much. I think that's a reference to old spaghetti westerns where they have a budget and so they really, because it's different characters. One is Ace Spec,
Yep.
and then the character he comes back as is Butch Pooch.
Yep.
And so, as far as I know, it's a reference to that. Like when you had low budgets and 10 actors, you just put them in makeup and recast them.
Yeah.
And be like, he's now someone else. It's just like to the B-grade spaghetti westerns.
But then like Django's suspicious of him, like he knows who he is, and he's wearing the hat the whole time where his head got blown up. Like it's just, I don't know. It all fits really well together. I think
it does. I don't like. That's a good point because there is that scene where it's like they clearly have like, I've seen you somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it's just a knowing.
He's just pointing out. It's a knowing nod. I think. Like there's not some cosmic force that's brought this man back to life or anything.
The sheer evil of slavery has brought him back. Yeah, like that is the one. Again, taking slight criticisms. Like if there was a criticism to level at this movie, I think for me it would be that there is almost too much cute nods at at films, and it's not even really an insult because I like them. But like you mentioned before, the scene with Franco Nero, where he's like, "What's your name? Can you spell it?" It's like,
yeah,
that's literally just saying, look at me, I got Franco Nero here. There's no purpose, there's no point for it, but it's just cute. And same with this, recasting him is like, it's distracting, but it's like, no, this is what movies used to do sometimes. And it is cool, but I can see a world where people just be like, why is there half an hour of little film nods here? Like, trim those off, you haven't leaned to our movie. Yeah. I personally don't want that, but it's a criticism in the aether.
I understand it. It's not why I'm here, but
yeah. Well, I didn't even pick up on it, so I was just googling that. I was like, "Wait a minute, who was he at the start?" And then I was like, oh, "Okay, when he's one of the Speck brothers." I didn't even pick up on that. So there you go. I thought he looked familiar, but obviously it's a long film.
It is.
I was in a completely different frame of mind by the end of it.
And look, mustaches hide a lot,
Yeah.
Put one of those on somebody, they're a whole new person.
Exactly. Is Jonah Hill stunt? Is he stunt casting in this movie? Apologies. Is he stunt casting, Conan? Does he count as one of those?
I think so. Apparently,
I think he fits really well, though. I think it's funny.
It's great.
In the original script, he had a much bigger scene. Like there was a whole thing where he was a previous owner of Broomhilda, and so I think in an original 6-hour version, he would have had more to do.
Yeah,
but he definitely feels like a stunt cast in this. Yeah, it's like why is Jonah Hill got 3 lines?
Yeah.
But they're funny, good lines.
It's really good. Funny. Like there's a fine line between stunt casting and then having just like Don Johnson be Big Daddy. But it's like that's not a stunt cast. That's kind of like this guy is a titan of the industry. But at the same time, the whole time I'm like, that's Don Johnson. Like it's cool that he's here. But like I know, is Walton Goggins a stunt cast being Billy Crash?
Man, I love me some Walton Goggins. It's so good to see him show up. I think Quentin Tarantino might be a Justified fan. There's a few Justified castings that show up throughout this and the next film, and so. But he plays it well. Apparently, he's in Hateful Eight as well. I probably should watch that.
He's one of like the main. In those 8 characters, about 4 of them are sort of side characters. Goggins is one of the main characters.
Awesome.
So he's got a lot of screen time. He's really good in that. You should see Hateful Eight. It's good.
I didn't like Hateful Eight. I should watch it again. It's long and slower. Like it's meant to be a play. He wrote it as a play, and it is just. It feels like a play, actually. Yeah.
But I still liked it. The shootout in Candyland.
Yeah.
Like
so brutal.
Holy crap!
Blood everywhere.
I find myself cackling when I watch it. Right, like the sounds, the skids going off. Just every bullet is like a freaking watermelon getting blown apart.
Yeah.
The dude constantly getting shot that he's using as a bodyguard, like on the ground, like,
just over and over again. And then he shoots his sister. He shoots his sister, and she just flies out of the room. It's really over the top. It's so silly, but I don't know. It's so much fun. I watched this before Inglorious Basterds, and I'm like, oh man, Inglorious Basterds doesn't have that much violence in it. After watching this,
comparatively, like the shootouts with the blood are pretty insane. But he also does it respect, like when what's his face, when Candy dies, like it's the little gun to the flower. It's a little trickle of blood, and it's like, so it's not all like every bullet explodes in a big hail. It's only when it needs to be a massive spectacle that he does it.
Well, and it's mostly Django, right? And they say it earlier, like he's got a flair for the theatrical. Like I feel like that all just kind of plays into his character, right? I love where he turns up at the slavers in the blue suit. It's just
Austin Powers suit. Just straight up Austin Powers suit.
And then he gets on the whips. It's just
yes.
Yeah.
I think the best part is when the brother's trying to draw his gun and he's just fumbling it the whole time. He's like, son of a bitch, and he can't pick his gun up.
So dramatically, like one of the infomercials, like can't pick up his gun.
Your butterfingers.
Yeah. Don't you hate when your gun's all slippery?
Yeah.
I think the music in this movie is so good as well. Like this, when he turns up and he's like John Brittle, and it's just the trumpets crescendo.
Yeah,
like all the musical cues in this. Same with Inglorious, but I didn't mention it with Inglorious, but like some of the way he knows exactly when to do needle drops and the choices that he makes. Like the opening Django theme song is really, really good. The mode, the 100. What's the song? Like when he blows up the slavers at the end. I don't know what that song's called, but that song's really good. I know, like combining the sort of like the modern rap stuff with some of the classical Ennio Morricone stuff is I don't know, it feels really inspired. Like it's perfect for like this is a Western about slavery. So he's combining these two pivotal like genres of music, and they're so good. He's got the perfect ear for it.
Yep. Just to talk about Leo a bit more, but there's that scene where he cuts his hand on the skull. Like, I don't know, that just reminds me, there's that meme about how every time people watch Lord of the Rings, they're like, oh, he stubbed his toe in that film, in that scene. Like, I'm always like, Leo actually cut his hand in that scene. That's always my look, I'm Leo pointing at the TV.
The Leo pointing
the Leo pointing bell for the next film. He's so good in this.
Yeah.
Like, should have won more awards for it, but he's really good.
That scene, like the whole dinner scene, is again, that'd be like top 5 things Tarantino's made, I think, because like similar to the Inglorious Basterds, you've got these two incredible actors going at it, and they're each trying to one up the other, but they both have ulterior motives as well. And the whole time you're there, you're watching Jamie Foxx try not to make eyes at Broomhilda.
Yep.
And you see, it's just
you got Samuel Jackson walking around, making eyes at everyone, and
it's like it's tension personified. It's just like everyone is just playing poker with each other, and any moment someone can shoot. It's
And then you got like his sister and the other blonde dude they're just oblivious. They have no idea what's going on.
they're just being difficult.
Yeah.
That scene when Leo's like, I can't imagine 2 weeks in Boston, and they're all laughing, and the lawyer's just like choking on his thing as well. It's just, everyone has to. Yeah, it's so great. God, yeah. No, that scene's amazing.
Yep.
And they have white cake for dessert.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love like bringing out phrenology too, like as if, I'm so much smarter than you. Look at this science that I know. You're a moron.
Did you guys find the Mandingo thing not confronting, but I guess, I don't know, like, because in the same vein as Inglorious Basterds, that could be, I feel like there were some arguments that was problematic, right? Because Mandingo fighting is not a real thing. Like, there would have definitely been some fights between slaves, and there are accounts of that. But the idea of a blood sport around it just, like, it doesn't make sense, and it never really happened. I don't know, do you guys find it weird, or do you guys find it difficult, or do you think it needed it? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I find the scenes when it's happening pretty confronting in this movie. Like, I don't know, overwhelmingly from this movie, like, just the treatment of the slaves as less than people, like, it really stands out and is I don't know, stands out for me as someone who never experienced slavery or anything like that. Like it just, it hit home for me. But yeah.
Like I don't know if it's just like my lack of knowledge around like the history sort of thing. Other than what I know, but I didn't know that it wasn't a thing that like fighting. And
I
stuff
didn't
like
actually
that,
realize
so-
it wasn't a thing either. Yeah.
So I'm just like I'm a bit ignorant when it comes to that sort of stuff. But it seemed like something I was like, yeah, okay, assholes would have done that back then. Like it's kind of I didn't see it as something like too outside of the realms of someone that like Candy would have done back then.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it's confronting, and it's just like it's horrible.
Yeah, it does a good job of like, you're right, like this movie ironically kind of in a way makes you feel more makes you feel more viscerally the horrors of slavery, and as opposed to like plenty of movies that are actually factual about slavery. Especially when they're not as confronting, they're written like, oh, that was a hard time, but it's in the past. Whereas you see this and it's just like, oh, this is like they're probably like this. Some of this stuff would have happened to some extent. Like this is truly atrocious.
Yeah.
And like it actually have a proper visceral reaction that makes you. And that's coming back to this whole like alternate history trilogy. Like by including these things that aren't real, he's kind of making you, the viewer, feel the way you're supposed to feel about this. Like you should be repulsed by slavery. But the more you confront and talk about anything, the more numb you become to it. And so by having something so vehemently upsetting in here, it's like, oh, that's tapped into the feeling that I should be having. It kind of reminds you, oh yeah, this, you should never get comfortable or like, that was bad. You should never just be complacent. It's like, no, it's good. Like, keep that in mind next time you think of the idea of slavery. It's like, no, think of the horrible scenes from Django and, remind you of how sickening it is. Yeah.
All right. Shall we move on to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yes.
A faded television actor and his stunt double strive to achieve fame and success in the final years of Hollywood's golden age in 1969 Los Angeles.
Grana, you'd never seen this movie, right?
No, I hadn't seen this movie.
Oh.
Pray tell thoughts.
Look, I came into this. I didn't know who Sharon Tate was. I didn't know much about the Manson family. I know very little about 1960s cinema. Like, I feel like this movie isn't for me in a lot of ways. Like, this movie is for Tarantino. It's for the nostalgia he feels of that time. It's for film critics. And it's for this story that I feel like was probably pivotal to when he was young, right? Like, I feel like, the Manson family breaking in and killing a young actress is something that he would know about, like, really well. And if I had known that was coming up, like if I had known, Sharon Tate, she died to murderers who invaded her home, I would be expecting that the whole film, and I feel like I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more.
Oh, so you didn't even know that was like...
I knew nothing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
See, my knowledge around that was definitely lacking, as in, like, but I remember before watching the film, like, I knew that Sharon Tate and something about the Manson murders and stuff like that, and I'd heard about that, and I'd known that that's who Margot Robbie was playing, so I did have that kind of expectation going into it. But especially after watching it, this most recent one, halfway through it, I kept being like, man, I wish I knew more about like the Manson family and this ranch, and like who is this person supposed to be in real life, and like why should I be feeling creeped out by this scenario going on? That's like what's lurking in the background. I watched a documentary on the Manson murders after watching the film because I was like, all right, I need to know more about this, and I feel like I have a better idea about it. But yeah, it's definitely like the last act is definitely a fun twist. So you have that knowledge going into it. But
were you expecting the whole time, like, okay, at any moment someone's going to die, or were you like what were you?
Oh, like I was expecting it to turn violent at some point. Yes, only because it's a Tarantino film, I guess. Like I feel like the needle has to drop somewhere.
Yep.
There's got to be some big action shootout, and I feel like he's definitely going against his tropes here a lot. Like, we've just talked about two really big, tense, fun starts to movies, and this one is like the most subdued, talking about his failed career, in a bar, essentially. Like there's no big action shootout at the start of this film.
No, there's no tension really, except for Spahn Ranch. Like,
yeah, and like if I had known that this, like if I'd known anything about the Manson family, I would have been Leo pointing at the TV during that scene. But I didn't know nothing, so I'm like, oh, this is weird. I suspect this is a cult, but they don't really reveal anything at all from that. Like,
they
don't give much away.
No, it expects you to know. Like, you come into this movie, and it's expecting you to know all, who they are and all that.
Expecting you to know Hollywood and
like it is very much like, look at these actors who you should know about. And so if you don't, you just
Like, I know some of them. Like, I know Steve McQueen, and I thought his little moment was kind of funny. And like, I know Roman Polanski, and I'm like, didn't he diddle kids? And I thought this was going somewhere with that, and it didn't. Like, I don't know.
It comes later.
Yeah, so I guess
right.
that comes long after.
I know. I understand now.
It's that is the most interesting part, right? Knowing what we now know, where he's got a pretty spotty history. But it's like I guess it's just like, because this whole movie is literally a fantasy. It's literally a fairy tale, right? It's once upon a time in Hollywood. It's Tarantino being like, what if the defining moment in my mind, because he calls this the golden age. This isn't the golden age of Hollywood. The golden age of Hollywood was in, like, I think, the 30s or 40s. But this is what he sees as the golden age, where it's when he looks back as like, that was when Hollywood truly became this great new thing. And he's basically saying, what if this moment where the magic died, when Sharon Tate, who, in this movie, she's like an angel, right? She's a graceful presence who just floats through the world. She is
with
at the
dirty
beginning.
feet.
Yeah, she's the beginning. She's the beginning of what could be the biggest career of any ultimate act stardom. And he's like, she is perfection. He said that before. He's like, she's meant to be this loving, this beautiful presence. And he's just reimagining a world where she doesn't get killed and Hollywood doesn't change for that. And it's a cool twist to be like, the whole time you're expecting, or at least for me, because I knew she died. It's like, okay, at any moment now it's going to happen. And then it doesn't. And it's like, okay, this Tarantino is actually just like, he's literally writing like fairy tale fan fiction here. He's like, this is what I wish the world was like.
Yeah.
And that's so weird. That's such a strange thing. This guy who's cut his teeth on edginess and has basically made a brand about being kind of transgressive makes him like, this movie feels like an anti-Tarantino movie. Like I say, it doesn't have any of the tension or the tight plotting. It is like a lazy 3 days of driving around and Brad Pitt getting his shirt off.
Yep.
And dirty hippies. And it's like,
yeah.
And that's it. There is no real plot here. None of the usual even the dialogue doesn't like snap or crackle the way Tarantino dialogue usually does.
No.
It's a lot more subdued. It's like he's kind of making an anti-film. But it's I don't know. It's just to be like, this is what I wish had happened. It's really weird.
It's a weird film, and I feel like I said at the start of the podcast, the more I came away from it, the more I was like, I found that film boring. I don't want to watch it again. Out of all of his films, this was the one I was least excited to rewatch. I feel like everything from Spawn Ranch to the end saves this film a bit. There was a part in this where, like, my wife and I were watching it, and she was just like, "You're right. This film is boring. Like, what?" She's like, "What film am I remembering? This is really boring." And I was like, "Good news." I was like, "There's an hour and a half left." I was like, we've barely touched the surface yet. But then it does pick up, and I find it really entertaining from then on. I feel like really the first hour and 20 minutes, it's really like, okay, I kept feeling like I would enjoy this if I knew these references, like these film references, or
these radio station references. Like, there's so much background radio and everything. Yeah,
and it just feels like, now let's watch a scene of him acting out a scene from this film, or now let's watch a scene of this happening, and like, this is Leo talking about this character he played, and then let's watch a scene of that, and it's just like, this isn't interesting. Like, I'm not enjoying it.
Like, where I got the reference, I didn't I was okay with, like the Great Escape, where Leo's in the place of Steve McQueen. Like, I enjoyed that. That was kind of fun. But because I knew that movie, I'd seen that scene a heap of times before. Like, okay, like, I can understand who would like this. I can understand why he wanted to make this. Like, I feel like this is him just tapping into his nostalgia for the time, I guess. But
I just feel like
it's not made for me, right?
yeah, and like film critics always do that. Film critics love movies about Hollywood, and so naturally they're going to enjoy this movie that like pretty painstakingly recreates, Hollywood Boulevard, puts all the neon signs back up, is just spouting names and showing history of it. Like this is I didn't like it much the first time I saw it. I remember I was very much me and my brother-in-law saw it, and he's not a big movie guy, Tarantino guy at all, but he was just like, that was really boring. And I came out of it, I was like, yeah, that is nothing like I was expecting. I was expecting like a Tarantino film. I don't know. On this rewatch though, like it's definitely a movie. Yeah, if you sync with it, and if you're just like, this is a hang, I'm just gonna hang out with Leo and Brad, and they're just gonna, yeah, we're just gonna drive around LA together. It's kind of like Grand Theft Auto, we just drive around the streets and just listen to the radio, and so it's kind of fun, just chill out. That's kind of what this movie is. It is the kind of movie that I can see myself putting on at moments and being like, oh, now's just going to be a cool, I don't know, here's them watching FBI together. And I just like seeing Brad and Leo bro out.
Yeah, like that scene's kind of fun. And like you get the Leo pointing meme there, obviously, too. But like here's this really corny episode of TV and they're critiquing it. It's kind of fun.
But yeah, it's, but then it also, I don't know, I go back and forth because then it has moments where it's like some of the scenes just drag on and on. And there is so much kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of pointlessness. Like I read the book because this is the first book he released as well. He released a novelization afterwards, which expands a lot of it. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what he really wanted to write. Because basically he's just written an entire fictionalized like history of Hollywood where these two characters go on and like Trudy, the little girl who he auditions with in that episode of Atlanta. He talks about her entire fictional career and how she gets this role, but she misses out on that role. And it's super weird to be like this. He has literally just imagined all of history, but what would happen if he had these three idealized characters? If he had if he had Rick and Cliff, it's very strange. Like it works kind of like this weird, almost Wikipedia, this encyclopedia of like this is all of this. This is Tarantino's brain in print, where I can just go through and see what he thinks of all this stuff. But and as a movie, I don't know. Part of it, like the feel and the vibe, works for me, but a lot of it, the rest of it doesn't.
Like it was interesting reading, reviews and people's takes on this movie afterwards because obviously there's people more knowledgeable about the time and everything than me, and talking about how Leo's character represents like old Hollywood. Rick represents like old Hollywood, and then Cliff is like the here and now, and then Sharon Tate is like the future. And I don't know. Like, there's interesting reads on it, and like looking at like Cliff's fight with Bruce Lee.
Yes,
which is apparently there's a lot of controversy because obviously it.
Yeah, was it insulting his memory and stuff, which.
Yeah, but then if you look at it, like as soon as the fight starts, there's no crowd anymore, and like there's a theory out there that it's made up, right? Like it's Cliff's memory of it or Cliff's telling of it, and it's not really what happened. The crowd disappears. He does this superhuman thing and throws a man into a car door. Like
it puts a big dent in it.
Yeah, people can't do that. And then we get the same thing at the end, right? Because there's a lot of inconsistencies in that ending. Like why doesn't Cliff walks down the same road that they drive up. He doesn't recognize any of them all of a sudden. Like it doesn't see them, doesn't notice them. I don't know. And then he like miraculously kills them all while tripping acid. Like
that's the thing. He takes the acid and then everything goes pear-shaped.
Like I don't know. This is my experience with it's really difficult because with the book it expands on all this stuff. It's like it actually gives you clear, definitive answers to a lot of these. Because I listen to some podcasts about this, and they're like said a similar thing. They're like, yeah, that's got to be a memory. But in the book, it's like, no, this happened, and here's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, right.
So I'm like, so if you take it, I don't know how to reconcile those two things.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, I'm like, this is both Tarantino, and he clearly believes what he's writing. But you're right, in the laws of the movie, you're also right. It's like it is just this. It's him remembering on a roof where he's like, yeah, I kicked Bruce Lee's ass. It's like, did you, man? Did you? But then in the book, it's like he could kill this guy, yes, and like he probably would have if he'd fought him then it goes into explain how he's a World War II hero and he's killed like 15 soldiers and he's an incredible machine. Like it's very strange. Like this movie is just, I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, and he definitely like subverts your expectations in a lot of cases. Like there's that brief scene where it shows him and his wife on the boat and they talk about how people think he killed his wife, and like I feel like another Tarantino movie would show what happened there, like would show him
I was waiting for it. I
brutally
thought it
murdering his
happened.
wife,
Yeah.
or like when he goes to the ranch to investigate, and he thinks what's his face is in the room dead, but he's just alive, and he's like, "Stop touching me, just leave me alone." Like that's the opposite of what you kind of expect to happen. Like you expect him to find a dead body and then have to fight his way out, or something like that, right? Like that's where you think it's going to go, but it doesn't.
Yeah, nothing else. Fun note, it does explain exactly what he did with his wife in the book.
Oh, does it? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. I love movies where I have to read the novel to know to understand
Oh
it.
yeah, this is what's weird. Yeah,
What happened with his wife? I want to know.
Yeah.
So he does kill her, but as soon as he pulls the trigger, he regrets it, and he basically remembers that he loves her, and it's like, he acts in the moment. He does it. I think he's a bit uncertain if the boat has a bump or not, but he does shoot her, and then basically he holds her body together until they get the police, and he like regrets it the whole time, and he remembers that he does love her, and he gets let off because he's a war hero. Like it explains his whole record, where like he killed like 15 soldiers in the Pacific or something. But it also explains he gets away with murder like 3 times in the book.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, take that as you will. Because you're right, in the movie, it's like, I don't know, he probably did kill her, but we never truly know. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The final scene's a hoot and a half.
The flamethrower. Like as soon as I saw him, the flamethrower. He's going to get the flamethrower.
Chekhov's flamethrower.
Yeah.
This is great. I love the line. He's like, are you guys all okay? He's like, well, the fucking hippies aren't. That's for sure. Oh, it's just, and her just screaming like the whole time, and just like flailing her arms around, and like her face is all messed up. It's just like, we messed this person up. Like she killed Sharon Tate. Like we've messed, and the person they cast as her looks like one of the like. There's definitely, you can see. Oh, she played this one of his cult followers.
Oh, really?
Like, looks identical, and like the way she plays her, like, and all that sort of stuff. So
it's a real who's who in that scene. Like you've got Maya Hawke as one of the girls.
Yeah.
You've got on the ranch. You've got Sydney Sweeney as one of the girls as well. Like you would go on. You got Dakota.
Qualley.
Yeah, Margaret Qualley. You got Dakota Fanning plays Squeaky. Lena Dunham's the mother. Like it's
Austin Butler's there.
Yeah, Austin Butler. Like all these actors, like a bunch of them who were before they're famous. Like Sydney Sweeney wasn't really anybody at the time, but is now huge. Austin Butler's like an enormous celebrity now. Like it's I don't know, Tarantino. He's just got an eye for talent.
And you have my boy Timothy Oliphant going up as a cowboy.
So that speaks to another point about why I admire this movie. Like, what you say, there is kind of a whole lot of boring nothing, right? Like that scene where he's acting out in Lancer is very long, and we see him rehearsing the lines earlier, and then we see them acting this entire scene.
Yeah.
But then when you unpack it, it's like you're watching Leo play an actor who's playing the actor version of the actor he's playing, who's playing a different character. Like there's 4 levels of acting. Because Rick Dalton, the way he plays Rick Dalton, he's got a stutter. He's kind of nervous. He's really he's pretty subdued and mild mannered. But then when he's acting, he's very confident and suave. But then this character he's playing is like a character who's kind of he's a bit of a hick, and so it's pretty impressive to see Leo try to actors playing actors where he's not that good of an actor, but he's got to be a good actor to play this actor who's not that good of an actor.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that on this rewatch, I'm like, the whole point of this scene is to just be like, look how good Leonardo DiCaprio is.
Yeah.
This scene is literally just being like, look at this movie star we have. This is pretty amazing. And, Burt Reynolds, who Rick Dalton's based a lot off, it's like, he was kind of like that as well. Just like these amazing actors who, I mean, that's why you're in this. And yeah, if you're not that interested in watching actors just do acting, this movie's really crap.
But I feel like we get like really good acting performances in the other 2 films that are much more entertaining, and maybe they're not as nuanced, and maybe I don't see the skill involved in them like in this one as much as I see in those ones. But yeah,
no, that's all there.
Jack Perry's in this as well for like his final role.
Oh, Luke Perry.
Oh, Luke Perry. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, so he died really soon after. Hey.
Yeah. Yep.
Sideshow Luke Perry.
But yeah, That's the thing. That's a really long scene, and it's. I kind of had the thought watching it. I was like, man, I was like, I'm just watching this, like him play this other actor, and I get the levels of it, and it is impressive. It is kind of worth it for like the payoff of when he eventually does stuff it up and loses his shit, and then like him having an absolute emotional like meltdown in his locker room, like in his
That's trailer, yeah.
in his trailer, where he's like, I'm gonna need to stop drinking. You're an alcoholic, and he's just like, if you mess this up, I'm gonna blow your freaking head off. And then he like just takes another drink, and then he's like, oh god damn it, he's like, he's just a mess. It's great.
Apparently, a lot of that, ad-libbed by Leo DiCaprio as well, which is good on you.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Margot Robbie much. What do you guys think?
She's a weird role in this movie. Like she doesn't.
A lot of
I mean, as you
smiling
say,
and
she's
just
kind of like an
action
angel, I
stuff.
suppose, but she doesn't actually do a lot.
No, like she doesn't interact with Brad or Leo at all
Till the very end, yeah.
Yeah,
And we don't even see it. It's like the camera
Yeah.
panning away, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
But
through the voice box thing, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a weird role. I don't know. And the feet in
feet
this
are dirty.
movie. Tarantino just loved it. You know, he was just all about it.
Oh yeah,
He's got the
zooming
extended
right
cut. He's got
in
the
and
extended
just-
cut of that scene somewhere.
Yeah,
Her and Margaret Qualley both getting the grippers out. Yeah.
Apparently, didn't Brad Pitt like thanked their feet in like a speech for an award he won? He was like,
Well, he won an Oscar for this movie.
Yeah, best supporting.
That's
I think probably deserved as well, right? I don't know. Do you...
He's probably one of the more entertaining parts of this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah,
he's very good in this.
the Spawn Ranch scene is great. Like it is a scene that I feel like has a lot of tension as well, similar to scenes in Inglorious Basterds, where it's just like, oh, something not. And it was the scene where I was like, I wish I knew more of what this location was about or what the Manson family was about. I don't know too much about it, but I was like, I know something's afoot, and which Tarantino loves. But it's it plays it really well though, the tension, and it's just like
No, for sure. Yeah, Margot Robbie. I'm just like, she is really good. I
just
want to
doesn't do
see.
much.
No, yeah, and like, I can't say she's not a good actress, because she is, but I just feel like I haven't seen enough in this to be like, oh, I guess what I'm trying to say is everybody is like, she is the greatest actress of our generation, and I'm just yet to be like, oh, I see why, and I don't know if that's a problem with me, but I feel like this movie especially doesn't show that enough, and so I don't know. I don't get why they. I guess I do get why they don't interact, but I wish they did. And yeah, she doesn't do anything. She just kind of exists, and I don't know if that's a good performance or not. I don't know. I feel bad. I feel bad belittling Australia's brightest star, but
That's
feel like
Barbie you're talking about.
I'm just
You
yet
not
to
watch
be.
Barbie?
I did, and even then, I'm like, she's good, but I don't know. I'm yet to be like, this is why everyone loves her.
You should watch Focus with her and Will Smith. Apparently, that's good.
No, thank you. Will Smith meant to be Django, turned it down.
Yeah, what a choice, eh?
What a choice.
Man can throw a punch.
Thank God he did. I like Jamie Foxx.
I like him in it too.
Yeah. Jamie Foxx is better.
Another bad Aussie accent from the costume guy's wife in this movie.
You know, she is.
Yeah, I know, but it's so over the top in this movie. Like, it's not even.
Yeah, it's
like, he's definitely like, play it up as much as you can, please, or I'll come in and do it.
Yeah, Tarantino would have been like, that's not a good Australian accent.
Call that an Aussie accent? Here's an Aussie accent.
I'll teach ya. Watch Django.
All right, we're watching Django again. We need to show what.
Let's go to Marseille.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, you're right. She's hamming it up a lot, but
yeah,
she's also in Django, actually.
And like, that's the thing, like, we get Kurt Russell and Al Pacino in this as well for like one or two scenes.
One scenes,
It's like, it's great. The cast is like impressive.
This has one of the biggest cast lists of like any Hollywood movie.
I mean, who turns down Tarantino though when he rings up? Obviously, Will Smith does. But,
Will Smith does.
Pretty much no one else, I feel like.
No, yeah, I wouldn't be. I don't know why you would. Yeah.
Like, do you think Brad Pitt or Leo are just like they see Tarantino's cooler idea and they're like, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, do you think they think about it? I don't know.
Well, apparently, there you go.
I was just gonna say I kept waiting for Christoph Waltz to show up. Like,
Or Samuel L. Jackson, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big oversight that Samuel L's not in this, which is really weird. I don't get why. Like, I feel there could have been a cameo somewhere. Apparently, like Tim Roth was in a cut cameo in one scene, and Michael Madsen
on the list there, yeah.
And Michael Madsen is in literally one scene for like I think 6 seconds. He's just this tiny little role, so I don't get why Samuel L's not in it. But no, apparently the story of how he got Brad Pitt into it is he went and met up with Brad in France where he's living. They drank 5 bottles of Brad Pitt's own wine and was like, he convinced him. And he had to do a lot of convincing because Brad had sworn to never work with Harvey Weinstein.
That's right. I did see that, yeah.
And so Tarantino in an act which maybe could be questioned, we had to convince him to work with, him and the Weinstein Company. But that's a whole other thing to try to dredge up.
And he was just like, buongiorno.
But thankfully he got in there because like this pairing, Leo and Brad, they're so good. Like they're sort of, I don't know, their broship is really nice. Like just kind of the great scene where like Leo starts to cry and he like falls into him and it's just like these are old fashioned men, so he's like, all right, pull yourself together, put the glasses on so we can't see you cry. But at the same time it's like you can just tell they're just best friends.
Yeah, he's just like, oh yeah, I just like driving you around,
Yeah,
I'll get up on your roof and fix your antenna, sure.
He is the greatest friend you can think of. It's like, hey, could you go back and this? He's like, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm working, he's like, no, you're not working this week. He's like, all right, cool, I'll pick you up tonight. What a legend. Just good guy, Cliff.
I mean, imagine pulling up to that parking spot every day with Leo's massive face there in front, and then you hop in your shitty little car to drive away.
Lives in his trailer with Brandy, the dog.
Yeah.
My question is, how is he not dead? All he eats is mac and cheese. We hear that he's going to order a pizza, and then he just drinks beer.
Ripped.
Obviously,
he's doing something right.
And he just drinks beers and Bloody Marys. Like,
well, I'm on day 4 now of eating that diet, so I'm seeing how I'm going. But
I think people made of stronger stuff back in the day.
Must have been. It's all the cigarettes he smokes.
And he just drives all day. You never see him working out. What's he doing?
Does no exercise at all, but he's just absolutely jacked.
Yeah.
We never see him do a stunt either. So. Like,
no, you see that scene with the car where it's got a little arrow and it's like Cliff in the car. I want to know, right? If that's because he's like the whole time he's like, yeah, if he needs to do a stunt, it's me. We know what stunt doubles look like now. Stunt doubles look like them. Do you think they look at all like each other, Brad and Leo?
No, my wife was like, they don't look anything alike, and I think she's right. Like, they're not.
They're two white dudes, middle-aged white dudes.
Yeah.
Especially movies back then, it was just like, put him in the same costume, you're good to go.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's like
you probably get away with it, I'd say, but
yeah, it is something I always like butt up against a bit. Like I love seeing them together, but I'm like, would they really pass for stunt doubles? It's like this guy looks nothing like him, but
they're built pretty differently too. Like body shape wise, not just face wise. Yeah,
not seeing it. But yeah, 60s are a different time, I guess.
All right, well, unless anyone's got anything more to say about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's it for this trilogy. Let's rank them. For me, it's Django, Inglorious Basterds, Once Upon a Time. I'm just barely Django in front of Inglorious Basterds. Like, they're both phenomenal films. My favourite 1-2 punch from a director, I think, ever.
Yeah. I would have to go Inglorious Django once. You're right. It is close for Django and Inglorious, but yeah, I think Inglorious is just his best.
This is really hard. Like, any given day, I could change the top 2, but I would say Inglorious, Django, Once Upon a Time, just because Christoph Waltz is so damn good in Inglorious Basterds, and his scenes just, I'd put them on if I was teaching like an acting class. I was like, watch him go. Like, he's so good in this.
But Leo's your favourite actor, Luke, and that's just
and he's very so good Leo performance. Django. I know.
But if you want to see a good Leo performance, you put on Once Upon a Time.
No, but
And you just
then you have
you
to
just
watch
hang
Once Upon a
out.
Time is the problem.
just hang out with Rick Dalton.
Hang out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for the good, the bad, and the worst. What are we doing next fortnight? I'm not even sure where we're up to.
Your choice.
Is it my choice?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you prepared for this? Because I
Yes.
forgot to remind you beforehand. We were talking about doing Equalizer, but I don't think that's going to happen in our cinema,
No.
unfortunately.
3 is still in our cinema this weekend, I think.
Is it?
It is.
Oh, bear with us, folks.
We might have to just mark. It'll be a wild card. 2 weeks is a wild card.
All right.
Is it really my turn? I thought.
Must be your turn.
Oh, look. What about you?
I did Dunkirk.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Sorry. What? Yeah. So Zala.
Just watch every trilogy so you'll be prepared.
And quadrilogies and duologies and.
You
And
don't know
trilogies
what's
we
going to
made
hit you
up.
next.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us for the good, the bad, and the worst. Please give us 5 stars on Spotify, rate us, and rank us everywhere. Tell your parents about us. This podcast was brought to you by The Taste of Iron, a book by Conan Clark. Check it out on Amazon. I don't have a copy.
It's on my
here
reading.
my
It's
desk
on my reading
anymore.
table next to my bed. I was reading it last night.
Sequel coming soon.
Sequel
Yes.
coming soon. See, get in now so you're ready for when the sequel comes out.
Yeah. Amen.
All right. Well, wild card next week, but we'll catch you then.
Peace.
Arrivederci.
Buongiorno.